The chief medical examiner of Miami-Dade County determined that Christian's cause of death was a stab to the chest. Christian was stabbed as the knife punctured the subclavian artery in his right chest. If you look over here for just a second to either one of these screens, you will get a good idea of how large that subclavian artery is within the human heart. The chief medical examiner further determined that the knife entered Christian's chest in a downward angle to the depth of 3 inches. In other words, the medical examiner has indicated that the fatal knife wound which entered Christian's chest was the result of a forceful downward thrust penetrating 3 inches into that artery you just saw. You'll see there on those screens on either side how deep that 3 inches is. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it was certainly enough to kill him. This homicide has gained some notoriety since the defendant, Clenney, is an internet social media personality and influencer under the name of Courtney Taylor. Evidence gathered during the investigation of Christian's death showed that since November of 2020, he and the defendant, Clenney, had been involved in an extremely tempestuous and combative relationship. As an example, it was learned that the security and building staff at the Miami apartment documented many incidents of loud arguments between the couple after they moved into the building in January of 2022. Tenants as far as 2 floors above, in an apartment 2 floors above, were making complaints to security and building management about the noises and the ruckus. This problem had, in fact, had the building management moving toward evicting the couple from the building because of these many noise complaints. From the apartment elevator building, you will see that on February 21st, 2022 incident, a month after the couple moved into the building. So let's play that video if we could now. If you look at either screen, you will now see the video. That's them entering their apartment. You can see, you will draw your own conclusion, but it certainly appears that the defendant was aggressively attacking Christian. Such interactions appear to have caused Clenney and Christian to separate at various times in their relationship, including the last week of March 2022, when Clenney expelled Christian from the apartment. This occurred while Clenney's mother, Deborah Clenney, who was in town and staying in the apartment. Defendant Clenney and Christian then rekindled their relationship on Friday, April 1st, 2022, after her mother left to go home to Texas. At that time, Christian moved back into the apartment. Arguments began almost immediately, with police responding to the apartment. Police reported that Clenney appeared intoxicated when she was contacted on the evening of April 1st, 2022. This was 2 days before the homicide. On Sunday, April 3rd, 2022, the day of Christian's death, events started peacefully, with the couple filming themselves with their dogs in the apartment. A key fob for the records showed that Christian left the apartment at 1:15 p.m. and returned about 3 hours later at 4:32 p.m. with sandwiches that he had bought for both of them. So what we've done here now, if you look at the screens, you'll see there a timeline. While you look at it, I'm going to try to go through it because the timing is very important to understand in this case. So at 4:01, Clenney called Christian. Then she goes live on Instagram. And then at 4:33 p.m., she called him again, shortly after posting the video. At 4:33 p.m., Christian walks into the apartment. 10 minutes later, at 4:43 p.m., Clenney called her mother. That call lasted till about 4:49 p.m., just over 6 minutes. At 4:49, Clenney made a second call, almost immediately, to her mother. They spoke until 4:56 p.m., a little over 7 minutes. I think at 4:57 p.m., Clenney calls 911. At 4:57, police officers exit the elevator at the unit. Christian's stabbing must have occurred between 4:33 p.m., when he returned to the apartment with those sandwiches, and at 4:57 p.m., when the defendant, Clenney, called 911. Also, at the same time during that period of time, that being 4:33 p.m. to 4:57 p.m., neighbors began calling the building manager about a disturbance at the apartment. Security called 911 at 4:46, notifying them of the disturbance. 11 minutes later, at 4:57, defendant Clenney called 911 to tell the police that Christian was suffering from a stab wound and needed help. On that 911 call, Christian can be heard in the background repeatedly saying that he was dying and he was losing feeling in his arm. Defendant Clenney is also heard saying, "I'm so sorry, baby." In her telephone statement to the police on the date of the incident, Clenney's mother stated she heard her daughter yelling at Christian, remember she's on the phone with her, telling him to leave the apartment, and she heard defendant Clenney saying that Christian was lying. Later, in her what we call post-Miranda recorded statement to the police, defendant Clenney admitted to having caused Christian's injury, also provided several inconsistent accounts about the incident itself. After an argument, defendant Clenney claims and says that Christian shoved her against the wall by the neck, and although he did not actually choke her, then she says he threw her to the ground but allowed her to get up. And it was at that point that defendant Clenney went to a kitchen area and got the knife. As Christian sort of approached her, she threw the knife at him from a distance that she's estimated to be about 10 feet. The police observed no visible injuries, which would have corroborated her account, and she had no injuries. In describing the stabbing incident, at no time did defendant Clenney claim Christian was armed with any type of a weapon. And based on the location of the stab of the wound, the medical examiner opined, in other words, it was her opinion, that throwing the knife from that distance would not have caused that fatal stab wound, but rather that it was a downward strike with a knife could have only caused that fatal stab to the artery that led to the Christians bleeding to death. The violent and toxic 2-year relationship of Christian Obumseli and Courtney Clenney did not have to end in tragedy with Christian's murder as a victim of domestic violence. Personal relationships should never involve domestic violence. And make no mistake about it, domestic violence is a crime no one should tolerate. Men are often, unfortunately, unwilling to come forward as victims of domestic violence, or of intimate violence, as it's sometimes called. The sequence of domestic violence events can be broken, but it takes a first step. That first step needs to be taken. If anyone is caught in a domestic, dangerous, violent situation, please know that there's a strong, huge safety net of resources and shelters in this community that are available. If you are, of course, in an emergency situation, you've got to call 911, but you can also call your state attorney's domestic violence resource line. It's available 24/7, days a week at 305-547-0140. We can and we want to help. If you're in need of shelter or services, you can call Miami-Dade County Coordinated Victims Assistance Center helpline for assistance at 305-285-5900. And you'll see up on their screens, there is a QR code. Any one of you can just, that's watching this, you can just put your phone with the camera app right on that QR code. It will immediately go into a domestic violence resource line for you. So at this time, I'm going to ask our distinguished Chief of Police, Manny Morales, to come and say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam State Attorney. Good afternoon, everyone. This was an extremely difficult investigation, an extremely challenging situation to be in. I want to first give my condolences publicly to the Obumseli family. And I know it's kind of tough pill to swallow when it takes this length of time to try to bring justice, at least to this chapter of what is going to be a long saga. However, I do have to give credit to the men and women from the homicide unit that diligently worked the case. And I want to remind everybody out there, right, that whether it's domestic or any other type of violence, the Miami Police Department will not stand by on the sidelines. The Miami Police Department will come to the aid of the victims and do everything within our power to get justice for them. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank our partners at the U.S. Marshal Service that brought the defendant into justice. And we'll be here to support every step of the prosecution, and with capable personnel from the State Attorney's Office, we're looking forward to a successful prosecution in this case. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief. And at this time, we'd ask Larry Hanfield to please say a few words on behalf of the family. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the Obumseli family, Jeffrey and Karen, who flew in from Dallas and Houston, Texas, respectively, this is a day that they only hoped for. It's very, very sad, and they are dealing with the pain as we speak. But I want to personally thank the State Attorney's Office, Kathy Fernandez-Rundle, who is a tremendous treasure to this town, for once again showing the type of leadership for every citizen for Miami-Dade County, and the leadership of the City of Miami Police Department for their commitment to bringing this day into reality, as well as the U.S. Marshal's Office for bringing to justice the arrest of the defendant. We always believed that with a thorough and fair investigation that this day would come into reality. This is such a relief for the family, but it gives restored hope that even though delayed, justice will still come. On behalf of Cedric Johnson, who's part of my investigative team, Kathleen Hogue, Chief Assistant State Attorney, and Kalia, we are very indebted to the commitment, the hard work that was done by your staff for making this day of justice a reality, and a commitment to all the citizens to Miami-Dade County. The family will not be entertaining any questions. If you have any concerns, you can direct those questions to me. But on behalf of the family, I truly want to say thank you for bringing hope and seeing that justice was done. And that's all anyone can ever ask for and expect. And thank you so much, Kathy, for doing what you've always doing, for making the citizens of Miami-Dade County very proud of you.
Thank you, Larry Hanfield. You're always the true consummate gentleman and professional. It's always a pleasure to work with you. So with that, we'll take questions in English, then we'll break down and we'll go into Spanish. So questions.
Hi. Clenney's attorney said yesterday in a statement that they have been working hand in hand with your office. He was disappointed in the way that she was apprehended while she was in rehab, and that you could just give you notice that she would surrender. Has she been cooperative, and to what level?
You know, I truly understand Mr. Prieto's feelings on that, because when we feel it's safe and appropriate in cases, we do work with the defense to surrender their clients. This was a little more unusual, though, in the sense that she was far away, and I'm told that she was on a remote island. So as much as we would have liked to have done that, we felt that the prudent thing to do, that the right thing to do, was to go and get her and secure her presence. Now as we move forward, we'll be as cooperative as we possibly can, and I hope that she will and he will with us.
Two things.
Hi, Raj.
Number one, was she on the phone with her mom at the time of the stabbing?
We believe that she was.
The second thing is that video that you played.
The elevator.
Yes.
Yes.
Describe the significance of that video, because you may have some say, what does that really show? It was 5 weeks beforehand, but what is the significance of that?
Well, remember, the video is not in isolation, because you have a lot of folks that live in the building. You have a lot of documentation from the building management, security folks. The video, we felt, was just a very descriptive way to show what the relationship was, and who was the aggressor. Also, I mean, you come to your own conclusions, all of you will, the public will, the jury will, as to what they saw in that video. But we thought that was a significant reflection of what everyone was telling the police, and everyone was a very combative, it was a domestic violence relationship.
Attorney General, can
Yes.
you describe to us what might have been some of the factors that contributed to not initially arresting her off the bat? We knew about the problems in the building. We heard about the complaints, the neighbors, the loud fighting, whatever it was that she said when the police got there, and the blood all over the house. So why does it take this long for there to be an arrest?
You know, I leave that up to my police professionals as to why they did that, and we did do a warrant, but I believe a lot of it may have had to do with the gathering all of that information and reading it and having copies and then getting the medical examiner's report. Did you have a better answer than I do for that?
Sure. Our detectives know that sometimes you only get one shot at it, and you want to get it right, because we want to make sure that we do everything right by the book to ensure the family gets the justice they deserve. So as you're reviewing and you have only one side, and the definitive evidence is coming from the medical examiners, the subpoenas that we get from the phone, the conversation, the texts, that video was not initially available to us. So as we begin to put the case, we know that we have to put a comprehensive case, bring it to the state attorney's office with something that's solid to pursue a charge, especially in a murder case.
Lastly, and I understand how sensitive this all is to everybody involved, and about the great work that's been done by everybody standing there. The family and the gentleman to your explained to us that they had to learn about this death through the medical examiner's office and not the Miami Police Department. Can you explain that?
Absolutely, and my apologies to the families for learning about the horrific act that happened to one of their family members from the medical examiner, not us. Our homicide detectives contacted the local department in Texas to have an individual in person from a law enforcement agency be the one to deliver the news. Anytime that we have a homicide, it's standard operating procedure to make contact in person. When you're talking about the death of someone, you don't want to get a phone call. So we reached out to that department, and it got lost in the transfer of information. And before we were able to send the local department to contact the family to put them in touch with us to deliver the news, they were reached out by the medical examiners.
I just have one last question.
El español viene después.
I have one last question. There appears to be two critical pieces of evidence here in that Clenney lied about throwing a knife according to the medical examiner's office. The second thing is that she lied about being thrown to the ground. Is that accurate to say?
So, yes, there's no physical evidence that led us to believe that she was actually physically harmed in any way the day of the incident.
My question would be for you, Mr. Perry. From the family's perspective, they have been this whole time shocked to hear that she was trying to say this was, an act of Christians starting things and, in self-defense. How relieved are they to really know now, that there is evidence like this and going forward she was arrested? Can you talk about the relief of the family right now?
Yes, thank you. Good question. They are very, very, with great appreciation, relieved to hear that the true facts are finally coming out. They always knew, and we knew through our investigation, that the defendant had a history of being the aggressor throughout the relationship. She had a history of attacking the deceased. And so therefore, what you saw in the elevator was just an isolated glimpse of a pattern of conduct that was demonstrated by the defendant in this case. Her counsel, as a defense attorney, has indicated in different medias that she was also a victim of human trafficking and domestic violence. Clearly, the evidence is going to show that there is no evidence to support any of those. We believe that once all the evidence is made public and come out, I'm confident in the state attorney's office, I'm confident in the investigation, and I'm confident that continued justice will be done.
To that point, this question to the state attorney. Clenney's attorney did say yesterday that the charges are an injustice because she is a victim of domestic violence and human trafficking. Can you explain where the human trafficking element comes from?
Did you ask him?
I did.
Okay, then he's the best person to answer that question. I don't mean to be flip, because you know how I feel about human trafficking. I've been, just a trailblazer in that area, and we have a real issue in Miami-Dade County and in Florida of human trafficking. Florida ranks #2 in the United States in human trafficking, and Miami is #1, and we have the only human trafficking center that I'm aware of in the United States here. So I take human trafficking allegations very seriously. You know what happens at this point? We have the evidence that we have, that the police, and it's going to be a continuing process from this day forward. So the defense attorney will, of course, make his case, and he'll present his evidence, and both sides will then proceed with this whole process. We won't be doing this in the media. This belongs in the court of law, and that's where we'll go from here on. Okay.